The weakness and fragility in the financial system is at risk. The technocratic elite have built a system based on debt intentionally to trap nations and ensure that they are bound to and adhere to rules decided by unelected supranational organizations. The world must be subservient to them, and they constantly, voluntarily do so. They just don't know it. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to talk about Germany, we're going to talk about Europe, we're going to look at the US and China and so much more. But let's begin with this. German Chancellor Angela Merkel raised the specter of a new global financial crisis as she warned of the potential fallout from a trade war with the US, saying tariffs on European cars would be, quote, much more serious than levies on steel and aluminum. What she's saying right here is that what the US has done is going to take it even further. It's going to push it past that boundary, and the boundary I'll discuss in just a moment. So to go into what she said further here. The international financial crisis, she's referring to 2008, which ensured that we now act in the framework of the G20, would never have been resolved so quickly despite the pain if we hadn't cooperated in a multilateral fashion in the spirit of comradeship. This has to happen. So what she's saying is that we have to go towards these supranational organizations, which of course I'm against. However, what I want to point out, my opinion about the whole G20, about the IMF, the World Bank, all these institutions, is I look negatively upon them. However, if we see a breakup of these institutions, we'll know for sure that there's going to be short-term and potentially medium-term chaos. What happens in the long term, that's anybody's guess. But I can definitely see that this would cause massive disruptions, and it wouldn't be, I believe, for the economy in the short period, mid-period, that it will not be positive. Now, the stock market, of course, it's all funny money anyway. But I think that this will cause a lot of disruptions because it's all built, this whole system is built upon the decisions of the supranational entities and these technocratic elite. They're deciding that. Now, suddenly, if they lose some of that control, things are going to be completely out of whack. I think it could be something much further, and the next paragraph here refers to that. This is taking on the contours of a trade conflict. I don't want to use words that go any further. It's worth every effort to try to diffuse this so that this conflict doesn't become a war. Now, she said this specifically because she's saying we are in a conflict. It's not any more than that, okay? It's not any more than that. But it could get there, so watch yourself. That's basically what's happening here. And they're making threats back and forth. They're doing this, of course, trying to get both sides to agree upon terms that the other side doesn't want to. And I think that we need to actually engage in a real sit down between the heads of some of these nations and the US, and they need to make some real decisions, not just going back and forth yelling and screaming at each other. It's not going to get anything done. Now, take a look at this. With all this dislocation that's occurring here, with the prices that we've seen, I want to show you this. The average price of a house bought in San Francisco, if I may, let me pull this in front because I'm going to connect the two together. China implemented retaliatory tariffs on some imports from US on Friday immediately after the new US duties had taken effect. The move signals the start of a full-blown trade war between the world's two largest economies. I think that this is a big mistake, that they can avoid these type of conflicts with each other and simply just say, this is what we want, and let's do the deal in this way. Both sides will agree. There's no reason to engage in this because it goes from trade to, let's just say, on the battlefield. That's what happens, okay? They've been playing the currency wars for years, and it only escalates further from there. We are seeing these right now, which historically is never a good thing. And people believe that, oh, don't worry, the US can handle itself. It doesn't work like that anymore. The entire US could be shut down in seconds in a cyber attack. Seconds. Any country, in fact, could be shut down. The entire country, the grid, can be shut down to the point where it's not necessarily they flip a switch and it comes back on. They could put it out for a long period of time, and it would be chaos. It would be absolute chaos in short order. And then it would be, okay, well, how in the world do we figure out who did it? Well, they don't exactly have the resources that they did when all the power was back on. So they're in that defensive mode. They're not going to be able to just, retaliate immediately. There's going to be some big problems, I think, right away if that type of thing occurs, all right? Now, at the bottom, before I rant on too much, at the bottom here, I think it's absolutely critical to understand this. A spokesperson at China's Ministry of Commerce said that while the Asian giant had refused to fire the first shot, it was being forced to respond after the US, quote, launched the largest trade war in economic history. That's a quote, and this is a high-level person saying that. Big issues here. Very concerning. I don't know how they're going to deal with all of this, but it's problematic. Okay, now I want to switch gears into a bunch of detail, and this, technically it all links in. Because we've given the power to these governments, to these supranational organizations, they have decided to give us the only legal tender we're allowed to use, and they manipulate it, they bail out their friends, they do all of these activities. The average individual, they just want to work their 9-to-5 job, they just want to put clothes on their backs of their children, they want to have a house over their head, and they just want to mind their own business. But that's not the way this works. With all this crony business that takes place, where you have, friends of these different companies get into contracts overseas, they're rebuilding certain countries that were destroyed by other friends of theirs. I mean, it's ridiculous. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you watch part 2 of this video. I'm going to get into so much information talking about the destruction of currencies and the result of that. Make sure you click the link in the description of this video. Take care.